Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Hayes. It's September 12th, and the Ukrainian rout of the Russians from Kharkiv has really gone well, and we're finding out that it was not an accident, that it was the plan. There was a deception plan in place, and you gotta say, I love it when a plan comes together. But hey, let's go straight to the maps. Okay, as always, the maps are from the Institute for the Study of War, and all credit goes to them for this. And as always, I am getting a lot from their analysis. They are really owning this. And by the way, when you read press reports in various other places, you can really see, they're using their maps and we're quoting them. And so they're really driving a lot of our understanding what's going on. So props to them. Okay, looking at this map, you notice a lot of blue. There used to be a lot of red. This was all this arc here, even into that zone the Russians had occupied before. Now the Ukrainians had pushed them out. They've gone all the way to the Oskil River. They haven't quite got all of Kharkiv Oblast because on the eastern bank of the Oskil River is still Kharkiv. This line here is the Luhansk and Kharkiv border. And recall that Luhansk is the separatist republic, and the stated goal of the Russians is to completely take over the Luhansk and Donetsk province. And a further reminder, they haven't finished the job in Donetsk. They managed to get all of Luhansk, although this little bit was just taken back, but they've had Luhansk. They've been trying to get Donetsk. But this operation, right, the Ukrainians have pushed it out, and now the reporting is coming out that no, this was the plan, that this was an operational, that the Ukrainians deceived the Russians. They were talking about their operation in the south, the offensive. And before this, following the reporting, there were news reports. People were saying, hey, they keep saying they're going to do this offensive in the south, but they don't. If they don't put up or shut up, they're going to alienate their Western allies. That didn't work. That did not happen. But the point is, they telegraphed this punch forever. And then as they got going, apparently the reporting is that, they were doing the HIMARS strikes. They were using HIMARS both in the north and in the south, but they talked about it in the south. They showed footage. They talked about the bridges, and they got, informationally, everyone was focused on what was going on in the south. And then when the offensive started, they said, oh, we're coming in, but we're worrying down. We're going to ease them out. It's going to come, and they told a story of them trying to ease out the Russians at this lower level. And still, they kept the attention going there. It was an attack. It wasn't just a feint, but it was a fixing attack. And it got the Russians to redeploy, and that's a key thing. They redeployed units from up here so that when the hammer fell, they didn't have the troops they needed to hold the line. And the Ukrainians are saying, look, the Russians didn't just leave up here. We fought pitched battles. The army attacked. There was a lot of fighting, but, they had done a great job of operationally deceiving the enemy. And that is a good job. And ISW, they had a good point. They said, look, the HIMARS and all the Western weapons, yeah, they were important, but they couldn't have done it if they didn't have competent operational commanders, right? If they didn't have competent operational art is the term that's often used. And even getting into strategic levels of deception, and that this was a well orchestrated plan. And, it's nice speaking as an American, it's nice to have an ally that is not just democratic and on the plus side on the right side of history, but also competent in their use of the military. And so doesn't happen that often, right? In some of the people we've supported in other wars. So what we're seeing though is a big movement. Now, where are things going from here? Well, we've got some other stuff that I think is unfolding. If you scroll in here, right, this is, I believe it's not marked, but the city town of Svatov was a Russian hub, and there are reports that the Russians just up and evacuated, right? And so this is probably what that indicates. This is, indicates partisan activity, right? They have partisan activity going on in the rear, and this is in the rear area of alignment, right? And so if they're falling apart, if their infrastructure here is falling apart, right, the Ukrainians can come across the river, and there are a couple of river crossings. There's one there. I think there's another one there. There's definitely Kupiansk is definitely a crossing, and obviously there's a crossing there as we get higher on the Oskil. So the question is, are the Ukrainians going to come across the river and start getting the rest of Kharkiv Oblast and pressuring these guys in Luhansk? And if they're donut holes in here, that's certainly going to help them. And it's not going to help the Russians down in Lyman, who are trying to hang on to this flank, and they're being pushed, right, in these areas. If things are crumbling behind them, they're going to be threatened with being surrounded. The way they kept trying to threaten Ukrainians here was being surrounded or enveloped. Now, the other thing, interesting, the assessment of ISW is that Putin's plans to take over Donetsk Oblast, right? This is the objective. This is a Russian objective, stated objective at least, to get at least to this border, take over the rest of the oblast. They say not going to happen. You weren't making progress before, and now you've lost your northern axis. You were pushing from the east, pushing from the south, pushing from the north. Well, and you weren't getting anywhere. Now you don't have the north, right? So it's over, right? Is their assessment. And they're not very bullish on the Russians generating more forces, because most of their efforts at raising volunteer battalions and working within the constraints of not mobilizing, right? The fiction that this is a minor military operation, not a war, therefore we do not mobilize for it fully, and yet they need to mobilize. There's ISW, and I think they're right, is the Russians are not going to generate significantly more power, and so they've peaked, basically. Meanwhile, though, they say, look, hey, the Ukrainians are going to come across. Their says, look, Putin and his generals need to start establishing a line of defense, right, along the Oskil or probably along this border. Somewhere around here, you need a good line of defense. You need to start shoring it up. Yet they say, look, these guys continue to attack as if nothing was going on, as if nothing had changed. These guys are continuing their attacks. All these forces are still there. In the south, they're trying to hold the line as well. And so they think, again, in ISW's estimate, they're like, Putin is very likely to make the classic mistake of waiting too long to reinforce his lines. And so we'll see if that plays out or not. Speaking of the South and the fighting there, if we go to the map from the South, you see that there is still a lot of fighting. And you see they have made gains, right? Their offensive has been slowly rolling back. And so this is what they're saying. Look, this isn't just a feint. They are, in fact, doing pretty much what they said they were doing at the beginning, because they were keeping low expectations. They were saying, look, we're not coming in with huge ground attacks. We're not trying to get in the city. We're trying to ease the Russians out. Well, that's the beauty. If you could do your deception operation without actually lying, right, where everything you say kind of matches up with the reality on the ground, that's when you sell it. You just, we're not talking about what's going on up north. We're keeping your attention down here, which is what a fixing attack is supposed to do. And they suckered in a lot of troops who were countermarched, right? So a lot of the troops the Russians were bringing down to shore up, and here's Kherson down here, to shore up this defense, went back, right? And so we'll have to see whether this offensive down here picks up steam, right? And I guess that's a question. Will the Ukrainians go across the Oskil and continue to drive there? Will they pause at the Oskil thinking that's a good defensive line and reinforce down here? Like, maybe it'd be nice to get Kherson back. We'll have to see where they go with that. And again, it's good to have your enemy going, what are they doing, right? We don't know what they're doing. One downside to this, though, is it looks good, right? It looks like the Ukrainians are now in the driver's seat. They are conducting a war. They've moved out of a war of attrition into a war of maneuver, which is what a smaller force needs to do, right? A smaller country needs to be more nimble. They've shown their competence, and they are in the driver's seat. They have flipped the script. Their allies will probably, as we go into winter, be thinking, hey, this is a winnable war. They look like they're winning, right? So, yes, we're going to keep providing aid to you guys. It's not a bottomless pit. That's what they needed to do strategically. The downside, okay, if there's a fly in the ointment, as I mentioned before, Russia has been under a constraint of not fully mobilizing. As the Russians panic and the news gets in, it's bad for Putin. It's causing, we got to see what happens politically, right? And it can cause rifts, and it can cause, unrest in the country. And, I don't think he's going to fall from power, but it's not good. One thing, though, that might happen is it might either force Putin to mobilize, or if there's a nationalistic backlash, right, a rally around the flag effect, it might set conditions where he could mobilize. And this is long shots. This is speculation. But my point is that his constraint, an important part of this war, has been the fact that Putin won't fully mobilize. The potential backlash from Ukrainians doing well and not being able to cover it up is he may take that self-imposed restraint off. Now, they're not going to be good at generating forces. They chewed up a lot of their training base by deploying everything they've had into this fight. And so it's questionable how much a full mobilization would get the Russians and how long it would take to have an impact. But that could be something. And so we do want to watch that. I don't want everything to be roses, right? We got to be aware of some downsides. But that's where I see us now. And we will continue to watch what developments from Ukraine. Thank you for watching my short rant. I hope it was short and not too much of a rant. I'm Dr. Dave Hayes, and though I teach at Troy University, this video is my own work. Troy University has neither approved nor reviewed the content. So there. And if you want to learn more about Troy anyway, figure out who would hire a guy like this, you can always go to www.troy.edu. I also am going to have a little card popping up here that you can go see my bio and some information about where I teach, which will descend to shameless self-promotion. But I want more students. What can I say? And finally, the music you've been listening to is Tonight at 8 by Shane Ivers. So thank you for listening, and I hope you'll come back and enjoy another short rant.